5 June 2024. The following members are present: Councillors Ali Callison, Ralph Barker, Archie Buchanan. Councillor Ross Clark is not present. The following members are present: Councillors Jerry Convery, Margaret Kibbe, Maureen Devlin, Colin Dewar, Mary Donnelly. With apologies from Councillors Joe Fagan and Elise Frame. Councillors Alistair Fulton and Shalene Handyboat are present. Councillor Graham Horn is not present. Councillor Ross Lambie is present. Councillor Martin Lennon is not present. We have apologies from Councillors Monique McAdams and Leslie MacDonald. Following members are present: Councillors David McLachlan, Richard Nelson, Norman Ray. With apologies from Councillor John Ross. Fellow members are present: Councillors Graham Scott, David Shearer, Helen Toner. With apologies from Councillor David Watson, and Councillor Alan Faulkner is attending as a substitute. Thank you, and I'll now pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. We'll just go into today's business. Agenda item number 1 is any declarations of interest. No declarations of interest. Agenda item number 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting. These are on pages 5 to 8. These are submitted for approval as a correct record. I will move these as correct.
I'll second it.
All agreed? Thank you. Agenda item number 3 is master plan consent areas. These are on pages 9 to 12, and I'm going to ask Fraser.
Thanks, Chair. This report seeks to update committee on it. It's a piece of legislation that was included in the 2019 Planning Act that was approved by Scottish Parliament. Master plan consent areas allow councils to effectively pre-grant development, but it is noted in section 3.3 that the regulations for this are not yet in force. However, councils are obliged to publish a statement indicating whether or not they intend to create a master plan consent area, and the proposed statement for South Lanarkshire is set out in Appendix 1 at page 12. This confirms that there is currently no intention to create a master plan consent area, and that we will continue to review the status once the regulations are in place and within the context of the emerging local development plan.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments. Well, no questions or comments. Are we happy to approve the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is application P210225. It's pages 13 to 20 in your pack, and that's at Boghead Reservoir, Boghead and Lanark. And I'll ask Fraser again.
Thanks, Chair. This application relates to, it's a former reservoir, 3.5 kilometres south of Kirkmuir Hill, served by a private access that runs off the B7086. The application seeks to infill the reservoir bowl with inert materials over a period of 10 years, and following publicity and consultation, 393 letters of objection were submitted. The objections are summarised in section 7, but it is also noted that the Roads and Transportation Service have requested that a number of issues should be submitted to prove the acceptability of the scheme. This information has not been submitted, and as such it is considered the application should be refused for the reasons set out on page 17 of the report that is presented to members today.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. If you please indicate now. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Chair. Really, this has been refused on details. If I could just, if it's not, outside the remit. At one time, this would have been thought of a really good idea to get rid of old dereliction and turn it into farmland. Whereas we do tend to have a different view these days, but that is not the reason for refusal. It is on the transport details. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Any further questions or comments, please? There are no further questions or comments. Are we happy then for the recommendation to refuse? I'll move refusal.
I'll second it.
All agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 5 then is application P221224, pages 21 to 30, and that's Dunedin Quarry, Crawford John.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application relates to an active quarry situated 800 metres west of Abington Services at junction 13 of the M74. The application is made under Section 42 of the Town and Country Planning Acts and seeks to vary two conditions which relate to a high-pressure gas pipeline that traverses a section of the application site. The applicants have sought to remove the condition and state that any potential health and safety considerations can be covered in commercial agreements with Shell UK Limited. No public objections were submitted in relation to the application, but it is noted that the Health and Safety Executive recommended the Council seek the views of the pipeline operator. In this context, Shell UK objected to the proposed amendments to the conditions and suggested that it should remain as a means of protecting public safety. Extant planning circulars in relation to hazardous substances and the use of conditions provide a justification for the planning authority to retain this degree of control over activities at the site on the grounds of public safety, and this is expanded upon in Section 10 of the report that is presented to members. Therefore, while noting that the applicant does have a deed of servitude with the owner of the pipeline, it remains relevant for the Planning Authority to retain conditions 41 and 43 as attached to Planning Permission P200514, and as such it is recommended that application P221224 should be refused.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. Please indicate now. No questions or comments. The recommendation is refusal. I will move for refusal.
I'll second it.
All agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item number 6, and that is pages 31 to 46. Application P231293, Dunedin Quarry again in Crawford John. Fraser?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application, it relates to the same site that was considered under agenda item number 5, and it seeks to extend the operations from 2029 to 2036. No objections have been submitted against this proposal, and therefore subject to the continued imposition of conditions 41 and 43, it is considered that this proposal is acceptable and that planning permission should be approved subject to all of the conditions set out in pages 36 to 43 of the report that has been presented to members today.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. If there are no questions or comments, the recommendation is to grant subject to conditions. I will then move that.
I'll second it, Chair.
Certainly, thank you. Anyone otherwise minded? Thank you. Agenda item number 7, application P231289, that's pages 47 to 58. And that is the formation of football pitches in Blantyre for Blantyre Soccer Academy. And I'll ask Fraser to present.
Thanks, Chair. This application seeks to replace an existing football facility and provide an AstroTurf facility, as well as the upgrade of floodlights, fencing, the refurbishment of changing facilities, and increasing the number of car parking spaces that would be associated with the Soccer Academy's activities and a range of other community uses. The site is within a predominantly residential area, and as such the use is acceptable in principle. It is also noted that there have been no objections from statutory consultees. 26 objections and 173 expressions of support have been submitted in relation to the application, and the details of this are summarised in section 7 of the report, as well as all being available on the Council's planning portal. With regard to the assessment of the report as set out in section 10, of the proposed development accords with the relevant local and national planning policies, and as such the principle of the use is accepted. In relation to the details, while the proposal will result in an intensification of the activity of the site, it is considered that the restriction on opening hours, the erection of acoustic barriers and the increase in the parking area will ensure that this proposal is acceptable in terms of the impact on the amenity of the surrounding area. Therefore, subject to the conditions set out in pages 54 to 56, it is recommended that consent should be granted to Blantyre Soccer Academy.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. Councillor Graham Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for being the first one in this morning. I bet you thought you were going to try and get a whole meeting where nobody came in. But first of all, I want to make some praise for Blantyre Soccer Academy. They have an exemplar in their area, and if you look at their website and all the publicity, hundreds of children, boys and girls, play football there, and their sessions are open to hundreds, which brings me to the question, and also I was contacted by Councillor Razak, who's one of the local members, about this. is, and it's a question for roads, 38 car parking spaces. If there's hundreds of kids turning up for a session, the general view, again relayed by Councillor Razak and people who have contacted him from the Carrigans, the restaurant next door, and from the people in the residential area, is that 38 is not remotely enough, and that there will be potential overrun into Carrigan's car park and into the residential streets around Larkfield Hall. Could Rhodes give me the formula of what they used to come up with the term 38, or was that the figure that 38 that came from the Blantyre Soccer Academy? And I may have a supplementary. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, during initial pre-application discussions, the proposals were actually for 26 usable spaces, and we had a look at some of the other similar facilities around, and concluded that 30 spaces would actually be required for the football pitch alone. The hall itself, because there's a hall, we added in some car parking for the hall, which was 8 spaces. So in total, it gives you 38 spaces would be adequate. I mean, it's worth noting that part of our consideration was how the pitch would be used, and the Blantyre Soccer Academy advised that it would split the pitch up into 2. There would be 12 to 16 players per team, which would equate to approximately 32 players plus the coaches. With that in mind, there'll be some players who will car share, and it's obviously in an area that's very good in terms of catchment, so walking and cycling would also be expected. So we are comfortable that the 38 spaces in total would be sufficient.
Thank you, Fraser. Councillor Scott, you got a supplementary?
Yes, a supplementary. And again, thanks to Fraser for his comments here. Again, is there any way we can hold Blantyre Soccer Academy to a take the numbers game that Fraser has said about if there's only going to be 32 kids on a field at any one time, 38 is an adequate amount. Is there any way we can police the Soccer Academy in terms of that there isn't hundreds turning up and there isn't an overrun into Carrigan's car park and into the residential areas around? Is there any way we can police that, or I can even condition it? Thank you, Chair.
Yep, I'll get Fraser just to come back in. Councillor Scott.
I mean, certainly from a roads point of view, if there was to be any overspill, then there are a lot of parking restrictions in the area, in the immediate area, and it would obviously be the responsibility of users to park in a responsible place to park. I think it's also worth noting that the parents or carers that would be dropping off their kids and picking them up, it wouldn't be for parking for the full time that they were there. So again, I think if there was any overspill, it would be enforced with the sort of parking restrictions in the area.
Thank you, Fraser. Councillor Mary Donnelly, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just welcome the application, and Soccer Academy are exemplary in the way that they help and support youngsters. And it's nice that their application is opening up for schools to use the pitches as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor David McLaughlin, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's on the back of the concerns that Graham Scott had raised. So, a couple of points. The Jockstein Sports Barn, and Fraser had mentioned nearby facilities. You get a Jockstein, and there's another one in Hamilton at the Bent playing fields. Anytime there's any events on there, the parking on Hill House Road, for example, and on Bent Road is just absolutely horrendous. The cars are parked on the pavement on both sides of the road outside the Jockstein, and it's just terrible because there isn't enough space for 2 vehicles to pass through, and it's a long straight road. It creates an awful lot of difficulties. But that's not just for normal training. Obviously, that's when there's an event on. Fraser Jack's point about parking. There's a lot of parking restrictions in the area of the Larkfield Hall. Well, in Stonefield Road, there's double yellow lines that absolutely no one adheres to outside the shops. There are car park just adjacent to the shops, but everybody just parks in front of the shops when they're going into the shops. But that's the only part of that particular area that I know the area well, but I don't know that there's any other parking restrictions in the way that Fraser has put it. There's a lot of parking restrictions, I think is the word he used. I don't know of any, and I wonder if you could maybe elaborate. But before you do, on the point of where any events are being held, you're going to generate huge amounts of traffic, and that is going to severely impact on the area because people just turn up and abandon their cars. You know, they're desperate to get in, and you just need to look at Hill House Road to see that. Thanks, Chair. I wonder if Fraser could come back to me on the parking restrictions that I've raised.
Thank you. I'll ask Fraser just to touch on the parking restrictions part of it.
Yeah, the parking restrictions I was referring to were on Stonefield Road, an immediate area out across from the shops, and where it's most likely that you might expect parents to potentially drop off their children. I think the other point I would make is in terms of larger events, then there is a possibility for the soccer academy to speak to education, because there is a car park within the primary school that could be used to facilitate additional parking in that event.
Thank you, Fraser. And Councillor Maureen Devlin, please.
With the roads, I'm only looking at my own grandson. I go and watch him training. I'm there. His grandfather's there. They're there. That's 3 cars just there for a training event, because and all the parents are all there. And I can just imagine what the parking would be like in the area when there's an event. Because again, I go whenever there's a soccer festival on. The place is hoaching with cars. Even if you go to the Ravenscraig on a Sunday, you can't get parked because of all the different stuff that's going on. So I think that's got to be taken into consideration, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. If you want to indicate now, I'll take Councillor Donnelly, then Councillor Scott, and then we will come to a conclusion. So Councillor Mary Donnelly first of all, and then Councillor Scott, please.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any way that we could indicate to Soccer Academy where they would actually advise parents to park if they were having difficulty? Is that something that we could communicate or put in a condition? I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly. I don't think that's a planning material consent. I think that's up to the Soccer Academy to deal with that. We're to deal with the planning application. Councillor Scott, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to support some of the comments made in the debate by some of my colleagues, and to make one final plea, is my hope today was that somehow that we could ask the Blantyre Soccer Academy to go back and come up with a realistic number of parking spaces. I mean, if we can't do that today, then obviously I hear what Fraser says, that he thinks 38 is adequate. I have the same fears as Councillor Devlin in terms of the number of vehicles turning up at an event, and again imposing problems upon the Carrigan's business car park next door and in the area. Is there any way we can ask the Soccer Academy to come back with a realistic figure?
I'll ask Fraser just to come back in on that, and then we will come to a conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, we're happy that the 38 spaces is adequate for the numbers and the manner in which they've proposed to play the training. So, yeah.
Thank you, Fraser. Is there any further questions or comments? If there are no further questions or comments, the recommendation then is to grant subject to conditions. I'll move that.
I'll second that.
Just before we go to that, Councillor Alan Faulkner, first of all.
Just a problem. Having previous experience of Blantyre Soccer Academy, my understanding is they're youths, adults, male and female, and disabled. Is there going to be any disabled parking spaces available?
Yes, there's disabled parking spaces within the amount, yeah.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded that the recommendation is to grant subject to conditions. All agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed, thank you. Agenda item number 8 is application P240243. These are pages 59 to 68. It's a change of use of retail premises for a gymnasium at Unit 3 in Lanark. And I'll ask Fraser again.
Thanks, Chair. This application relates to a unit within a retail park that's within the town centre of Lanark, and it seeks to establish a gymnasium. Over 300 representations have been submitted in relation to the application, with 120 objecting to the proposals and 213 in support. The details of the representations are on the planning portal, while a summary is provided in section 7. No objections have been received from statutory consultees, and as stated in the section 10 of the report, the principle of the proposed use in a town centre retail location is acceptable. Comments have been made about potential noise from the facility, but this has been addressed by the imposition of conditions. But the comments regarding the 24-hour activity does not create any conflict with material planning considerations. Therefore, subject to the conditions set out across pages 64 and 66, it is recommended that application P240243 should be approved.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. Councillor Davy McLaughlin.
Thanks, Chair. Catherine McClyman had asked a question. I didn't know the answer to it, so I'm going to put it here. Where the disabled parking is to be provided, is it at the expense of removing cycle racks or cycle parking at the front of the building?
Fraser?
No, I don't have that information to hand, Councillor, nor the detail around that. It's something that we could contact the organiser around, or the developer around. I'm just getting some point outage now. There is a condition too that relates to parking and the arrangements that are around that, and that's what the developer would have to give us information around that, and that's something we could point out to them to ensure that people with disabilities, accessibility issues, that they're catered for within the development. So it's a matter that can be conditioned and a matter that we can pick up with the applicant.
Thank you, Fraser.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions or comments? If there are no further questions or comments, the recommendation then is to grant subject to conditions. I will move that.
I'll second it.
All agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 9, please, is application P240278. These are pages 69 to 76. It's external alterations associated with the change of use of a betting office to a restaurant at 4A Cullen Road in East Kilbride. Fraser again, please.
Thanks, Chair. This application relates to a unit within the Murray Neighbourhood Centre. And the current use of the building is as a bookmaker's, but within the context of the relevant planning legislation, the change to a restaurant is a form of permitted development. And as such, the detail that is under assessment today is only the external alterations. 6 objections have been submitted, which triggered the application being presented to committee, but the issues raised primarily relate to the use itself. With regard to the external changes, which include the installation of an external flue, it is considered that the proposals are acceptable and that, subject to a condition that requires further information on the ventilation system to be submitted, it is recommended that application P240278 should be approved.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. You could please indicate now. If there are no questions or comments, the recommendation is to grant subject to conditions. I will grant.
I'll second it.
All agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 10 is application P240297. These are pages 77 to 96 in your park, and this is at Orchard Farm in Carluke. Fraser?
Thanks, Chair. This application relates to a site within the designated Greenbelt on the north bank of the Clyde between Crossford and Braidwood. The application seeks to amend a consent that was approved by Planning Committee in September 2023 and involves changing the position of one of the houses as part of the development. 8 letters of objection have been received against the proposals, and Section 10 of the report provided to members sets out the assessment of the application, which addresses these objections but also seeks to outline the development plan context for the proposals. The principle of the development is acceptable as it seeks to reuse and rehabilitate a listed building and as such complies with Policy 4 of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan, which relates to proposals in the Greenbelt and in turn can be justified in terms of Policy GBRA 4 and Policy DM8. The revised proposals do not create any conflict with the original scheme that was approved, and a number of conditions have been attached to the consent which seeks to ensure that the works on the listed buildings are secured before any of the enabling works can proceed. And this is considered to be an appropriate way to control the phasing of the development in compliance with the development plan. Therefore, subject to conditions on pages 86 to 94, it is recommended that planning consent should be approved for application P, for the application that's currently presented to members today. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Any questions or comments, please? If there are no questions or comments, the recommendation then is to grant subject to conditions. I will grant.
I'll move.
All agreed? Thank you. Agenda item number 11, please, is application P240329. These are pages 97 to 106. It's a demolition of existing building and the erection of 4 terraced dwelling houses, associated parking and landscaping at 26 Church Street in Larkhall. Fraser?
Thanks, Chair. This application relates to a site located close to Larkhall train station and to the south of the town centre. The proposal involves the demolition of a former joinery business and seeks consent for 4 terrace houses and is an amended application from one for 8 dwellings that was refused in August 2023. 7 letters of objection and 1 comment have been submitted, and the details of this are summarised in Section 7. The application has, however, been assessed against the relevant national and local planning policies and taken on board the comments that have been received from statutory consultees. It is considered that the proposed development is acceptable. Conditions have been attached to ensure that access to the site is appropriate and that the condition of the road before, during and after construction is protected to ensure that the impact on the other residential uses in this area is maintained. And therefore, for the reasons set out in Section 12 of the report, it is recommended that application P24329 should be approved.
Thank you, Fraser. Any questions or comments, please? Councillor Graham Scott.
For his report. I've been contacted by Councillor MacDonald, one of the local members in Larkhall, about the situation regarding, if you look at the map, the vulnerable property appears to be number 7 Broomhill Court. Again, it's looking for guarantees or assurance from roads in terms of that person's access and any impediments in terms of construction. There's obviously concerns given the vulnerability of number 7 and its location right at the corner of the construction site and of the property site, that they might be vulnerable to getting their entrance blocked or whatever. If Fraser can have a talk to me on that and give some assurance to the person at number 7.
Thanks, Councillor Scott. I know there is conditions, but I'll ask Fraser just to come in on the back of it.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's a condition for a construction traffic management plan, Councillor, so we'll certainly bear that in mind when we're reviewing the plan that's submitted before the start work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments, please? If there are no further questions or comments, the recommendation then is full plan permission is granted subject to conditions. I will move.
I'll second it.
All agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 12 then. I have no items of urgent business for today. Can I please ask the clerk to stop the recording of the meeting and wish you all an enjoyable day. Thank you.